Hello. I needed to re-record this whole thing because I realized one of the buttons on my shirt was buttoned wrong. It was just bothering me, so I thought that I was gonna record this whole video again. Okay, what are we talking about? We're talking about Sally Rooney's most popular 3 novels. If you read her, you probably already know, or if you've heard of her, you probably already know the 3 books are Normal People, Conversations with Friends, and then Beautiful World, Where Are You? I think everybody who's on TikTok, Book Talk, or like BookTube has heard of Sally Rooney because she kind of blew up really fast and a lot of people love her books and they're definitely marketed as like sad girl books. I fall into that audience. I fall into the contemporary girly who loves sad girl books, who love reading books just to cry, who love reading about morally great characters and how life is so complicated. So before I even started reading her books, I was like, I hope that I'm gonna love Sally Rooney because everything that she writes about, everything that people talk about, I just feel like I'm the perfect audience. And the first book that I started off with was Conversations with Friends, which I loved. It was so good. It was definitely the best out of the 3 that I read from her. It's basically about how relationships are really complicated and how there's no right or wrong answer kind of in a relationship, and definitely how miscommunication plays a really big part in how a relationship is gonna go. The reason why I love the book was just that it really shows how even though a character may not be doing the right thing or maybe doing something that you as a reader know that is going to snowball into such a big problem, if you were in that situation at that time, a lot of people would do the same thing that the characters in that book did do. Not only does it explore the topics really well, but it also helps me understand like the nuance of a relationship. Oh my gosh, I loved Conversations with Friends so much that I was recommending it to everybody that I knew read. And I was literally thinking about that book for like months and months on end. And every time I thought about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so complicated, but it's so good. People like this exist, and situations like this happen all the time, even if it's not like a romantic relationship. And speaking about romantic relationships, I also love that the book not only focused solely on romantic relationships, but platonic ones, friendships, friend groups like best friends, ex-best friends, ex-lovers, all sorts of relationships was explored in this book in a way that felt very real. Everybody says a relationship is complicated and everybody understands that you need to put in a lot of work into a relationship, but I feel like this book explains just how complicated relationships can be perfectly. That's why I loved Conversations with Friends so much, and I do recommend that everybody read it, even though, spoiler alert, I am not a Sally Rooney stan, and that was the only book that I liked from her. The next book that I read was Beautiful World, Where Are You? Going in, I kind of knew that the book was about nothing. Like, I knew it was contemporary and I knew that nothing happens, which I was fine because I don't mind reading books that have no plot or like just no big dilemma. Like, I'm fine just reading for like a good time. Oh man, was this book hard to get through. Everyone else who's read Beautiful World Where Are You can also understand what I mean by when I say I feel like this book reads better as an audiobook. I listened to it while I was cleaning. It was very like slow paced, very like this could literally be happening to my neighbor. It does not sound that far fetched from real life. Obviously, that's what contemporary is. It was just so boring. There are books that talk about nothing that are interesting, and there are books that just talk about nothing and don't dive into anything deep enough and are just super shallow the whole way through. And it's just kind of like you start to explore a subject or a topic and you're like right about to get into the parts that are really interesting and right about to discuss about these topics further, and then they just move on to something else. And that was kind of what was frustrating because there are so many topics and so many scenarios that this book could have explored that I was super interested in, like a character's relationship to their family, a character's relationship to a father who has different religious values, especially friendships in college and how they relate to the world after you graduate college, mental illnesses effect on your work, effect on your productivity, how a college degree might not necessarily translate to a really good paying job. All of these kind of subjects that I was really interested in exploring was just touched upon but not explored enough that it grasped my interest. I felt really sad that this book had so much potential and like so many topics that I was super interested in, and it just didn't do anything with any of the topics. And another thing that kind of threw me off was the letters. Oh man. Listening to the letters, I do not understand how these are letters being sent in the era that we live in. I'm pretty sure Beautiful World, Where Are You takes place in like past 2010 probably. I just don't understand how people can write. I forgot if it was like letters or emails, but how they can write these emails, I'm assuming, in this kind of way, because it didn't feel like a conversation at all. It didn't feel like, hey, I'm catching up with my friend from college. It really just read like, here's are all my beliefs, I'm gonna shove down your throat. This is what I've been thinking lately, and you're gonna agree with me. That's kind of what it felt like to me, and it really like put me off because I agreed with a lot of things being said, but still I felt uncomfortable with the way that it was delivered, the way that it was fed to your friend or to the reader. I just was like, there's no room for conversation in here. It was like you're writing a blog post, but instead of people actively clicking on it that want to read, you're just sending it to your friend. And I don't know if that's the point, but it really was not interesting to me, the way that the ideas were presented. Another thing that kind of put me off was that a lot of these characters didn't feel open-minded enough to have a conversation. I kind of understand why they would all be really defensive and why they're so deep into their beliefs because of their past and like what they're going through. It's just really hard to explore a lot of these topics, and there are a lot of topics in this book to explore, but it was just so hard to really go in depth about these topics if it's not in a conversation between someone who might not understand or who might not fully agree or like educated. I'm really sad to say that I did not like Beautiful World, Where Are You? I think I took like 3 months to just get through like 10 hours of audiobook. It was really hard because I just was so bored the whole time. But finally I did get through it, and I haven't thought about it since. And honestly, I kind of forgot about it. The last book that I read from Sally Rooney that is really popular was Normal People. This is her more popular book, which kind of surprises me because I loved Conversations with Friends way more than Normal People. And people say that both of these books are very similar in terms of topics and discussions, but I don't think so. I understand that kind of the general umbrella topic is about the complications of relationships, but I feel like the way that it was written in Normal People is not as good as how it was explored in Conversations with Friends. In Normal People, there was so little character development. There was just so much basically miscommunication, which was the only factor why their relationship didn't work out. Whereas in Conversations with Friends, there's just like so many more factors that you kind of understand why a character in Conversations with Friends would lead them to this decision that they make. Whereas in Normal People, it was just because they didn't want to open up. At first, it was very like, oh, they're just teenagers. Okay, they're teenagers. They're gonna grow up. They're gonna talk to more people. They're gonna understand that communication is important. And then when I finished the book, I'm kind of like, did they really learn to communicate? Did they really grow as a person, or were they still the same? I could not tell. Same thing with Normal People. With Beautiful World, Where Are You, I started off reading. I just could not get into Normal People, but for a different reason. Beautiful World, Where Are You, I felt like it just read better as an audiobook because of just the way it was written. Whereas with Normal People, I couldn't get into it because it started off with a high school relationship. Okay. Oh my gosh. High school relationships, fine. People are in high school relationships. It's just a thing that happens, but it makes it so much more comfortable when it's like 2 minors doing things, and I'm not a minor, and I'm like, I don't want to read about that. An adult author wrote about minors. After the first, I think like, how many chapters is it? Like 2 chapters? I was like, I don't think I can continue reading on if it takes place when they're in high school, because I'm not in high school anymore. I just didn't feel comfortable. So I was like, okay, I'll listen to the audiobook. I'll like clean or do whatever while I'm listening so it doesn't feel that intrusive. Thankfully, they were only in high school for like maybe 3 or 4 chapters. The beginning 4 chapters. And then they were in college, which is fine because now I'm in college. So we're in the same age group. At first, I wasn't really frustrated because I was like, okay, miscommunication, I get that. I understand that. You're growing, you're learning how to talk to people, you're learning how a relationship works. But as I got through the book, I continued to get more and more and more annoyed because they never got better at communicating. And that confuses me because how can you go through different friends, different friendships, different relationships, different things in life, meet different people, and not learn how to communicate better? And that's when I started getting annoyed, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can continue reading this book because I don't see it getting any better. I feel like the characters had the same mindset as they did in high school, but now they're just in college. I don't really remember clearly if it was Connor's fault. Is his name Connor, the male main character? I felt like it was Connor sitting on the fence. He was very like, oh, I don't want to commit to Marianne, so I'm not going to say anything, but this is going okay. Like, the intimacy is good, and that's kind of what I want, but I don't want to commit. And I felt like Marianne was waiting for him to just say, okay, let's date. I'm like, bro, literally all you had to say was, okay, let's just try dating. Let's just try dating for reals and see how it goes. Instead of being like, oh, I don't want to ruin the friendship, or like, oh, I'm too scared to say, like, let's commit. Like, bro, you're basically already dating. If that's what you guys want, then you should just make it official. And if a breakup happens, how is that going to be any different than like your situationship breakup when your situationship is pretty much like a relationship already? And I think it's also frustrating when throughout the book they would date other people but still talk to each other and still do questionable things together. And I'm like, guys, obviously there's still some feelings there, and if you're respectful to your partner, you would maybe avoid this person, or you would just not get into a relationship when you still have lingering feelings. Everyone can tell that y'all like each other, so like, stop pretending. If the book was this long, but one of them said, okay, let's date for real, it would have been like this short. And the thing is, I kind of know that they're like kind of toxic for each other, and I kind of feel like even if they got together for real, the relationship probably would not have worked out. At least you know it wouldn't have worked out, and you're not just like kind of getting back together and then not committing and being like, well, this didn't work out, but we weren't in a real relationship, so like maybe if we were in a real relationship it would have worked out, you know? Like, it's just kind of like, why are you making it so complicated? Like, y'all should just date and try it out. Anyways, that's my frustration with the book. I did not enjoy it, and I'm really sad to say that I am not a Sally Rooney stan. I really wish I was, because everything that she writes about feels like the perfect genre for me. Yeah, that's my tangent. I don't know if I'll read her other book. If she's coming up with another book, I might give it a shot, but I won't have high hopes. I would definitely recommend Conversations with Friends. It is probably one of my top books of 2023. And everything else, wouldn't recommend it, but definitely read Conversations with Friends. Okay, see y'all in, I don't know, like a month.